Hello, 11th graders. Today we're going to be going over the Unit 1 discussion, which is on Thomas Paine's The American Crisis. The American Crisis was a series of pamphlets that emphasized Great Britain's abuse of power in the 13 American colonies. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to create a Google document in your Drive. So you want to copy and paste the instructions from Edmentum into your Drive so that you have a backup copy of the discussion. Oftentimes students will lose their discussion in Edmentum, they'll time out. So it's good to have a backup copy. The first thing that you do is you go into the discussion post and you find another student's post to comment on. Here are some examples of sentence starters that you can use in order to comment on another student's post. When you begin your post, so after you've commented on a student's post, you're going to begin a new post and make sure and have the first line in your post to reference the classmate's name who you commented on. I commented on so-and-so's response. So that way the teacher can know that you satisfied that first requirement. This is a good example of a student who thoroughly answered all three of the questions in the discussion. And you can see on number 3, the student also included a direct quote from Thomas Paine's The American Crisis in order to support his or her answer. So you're going to want to do the same thing. And also the student identified which type of rhetorical appeal was being used. The American Crisis takes place on the pages 14 through 20 in the tutorial. There's a lot of great information about these documents that Thomas Paine wrote, which were very influential to the Declaration of Independence. In the discussion, you're going to address these 3 questions. The first questions being, what was the purpose of this document? Who was the target audience? And then what ideas or events does he use to persuade his audience? That's where you're going to want to utilize an example from the text, either a paraphrase or a direct quote. Thomas Paine was a British writer who immigrated to the American colonies after meeting with Benjamin Franklin in London. His document Common Sense was very influential and linked to the Declaration of Independence. So he wrote that in January, and then obviously the Declaration of Independence was in July. So he wrote also the American Crisis essays same year, but at the end of that year in December. General George Washington, who later became our first president, went on to order that to be read to the Continental Army. So the thing to know about Thomas Paine is he really related to the common people, because without great wealth or status or education, he himself came from humble beginnings, so he related to the fact that ordinary people could find political power and economic success. Here is an example of when you get to number 3 on the discussion, what kind of quote you might want to integrate in. These are from the end of the American Crisis, number 1. So the first line of the American Crisis, number 1, begins with the opening line, "These are times that try men's soul." So when you're analyzing language, it's good to think about, is this an emotional appeal? Is this a logical appeal? Or is this appeal to the author's credibility or experience? And so that first opening line, "These are times that try men's souls," is an example, in my opinion, of pathos, which is an emotional appeal, because it associates the fact that these are difficult times and he's relating to that experience of living in those difficult times. The first example here, and these are in the tutorial as well, from the last part of the crisis number 1, is, well, let's identify if it's pathos, logos, or ethos. So while traveling with the Continental Army, Paine says, "Once more, we are again collected and collecting. Our new army at both ends of the continent is recruiting fast, and we shall be able to open the next campaign with 60,000 men well armed and clothed." So for me, that's an example of logos, logic, and ethos, credibility, because Thomas Paine is actually traveling with the Continental Army, so he's experiencing it, he's living it with them. So that's ethos. And then logic, he's giving examples of how well equipped they are. He says they have 60,000 men well armed and clothed. So he's saying, logically, we're going to be victorious in this battle. The second example here, let's identify if it's pathos, logos, or ethos. This is our situation, and who may know it. By perseverance and fortitude, we have the prospect of a glorious issue. Our homes turn into barracks and body houses for the Hessians, and a future race to provide for whose fathers we shall doubt of. So, in my opinion, I think this is a good example of pathos and an emotional appeal because it's pointing to the anecdotal or the story of the situation that is highlighting the difficult circumstances that they're going through. Hessians would be German soldiers, and so it's talking about how their homes have been turned into a war zone. There's barracks, there's body houses, there's German soldiers, and so it's another connection to the difficult situation of living during a time of war, but that the cause is worth it.